Inside the administration room of the Magic Tower, the professors stood gathered around the glowing panels, eyes fixed on the real-time data feeds tracking the students. Among them was Professor Snape, his arms crossed, gaze stern. The system's display revealed a grim update. Of the original 400 participants who had entered the competition, only 149 remained. The breakdown flashed clearly across the screen. The Magic Tower held steady with 46 survivors. Viragian followed closely with 45. The Mistira trailed with 35. And at the bottom of the chart, Colosio Academy had only 23 left. The chief of Viragian, Vachilios, let out a deep laugh as he studied the statistics before him. An arrogant smile spread across his face, fueled by the sight of Colosio Academy's numbers plummeting. Their already small group had taken a devastating blow. Hohenheim had just wiped out a large portion of their first-year students. Across the table, Hippolyte, headmaster of the Mistira, lightly touched her chin and smiled. She remarked with amusement that Hohenheim looked particularly commanding today. Meanwhile, the master of the Magic Tower, the long white-bearded elder, stroked his beard and extended a hand toward the display. A chuckle escaped him, unable to hide the satisfaction in his voice as he watched his student, Smarty Pants, finally reveal his true nature. In his view, Colosio Academy simply had no fortune in this year's tournament. The old magician turned his gaze toward Professor Snape, eyes narrowing with curiosity as he asked what had him so deep in thought. Professor Snape, his expression distant, continued to stare silently at the hologram. After a moment, he extended his hand, and, his tone heavy with concern, began by offering an apology. As hosts of this year's survival tournament, the Magic Tower bore a certain responsibility. He then questioned aloud whether anyone truly believed this map was safe for a competition of this scale. The old magician scoffed, his expression steeped in arrogance, and asked sharply what exactly Snape was implying. Professor Snape kept his eyes fixed on the hologram, his expression grave. He explained that the Magic Tower hadn't modeled the tournament environment after an ordinary forest, but rather on the deeper, unreleased zones, areas still largely uncharted and classified. As time passes, not only will the topography and the types of monsters begin to change, but higher-ranking entities will also start appearing, which the students might find difficult to handle. He continued, referencing a report unearthed by the Morgue family years ago. According to that report, a powerful monster estimated to be S rank had once surfaced in the forest's restricted zone, resulting in significant casualties. With a flat tone and eyes drained of emotion, Professor Snape pointed out that if a creature of that magnitude appeared again during the competition, the real question was whether the Magic Tower systems would respond in time. Did they, he asked, have any real countermeasures in place for the worst-case scenario? The old magician, cloaked in his usual air of arrogant superiority, didn't even bother to glance at Professor Snape as he responded with a dismissive tone. He claimed that the so-called news should be corrected, mere rumors, nothing more. He admitted he'd heard the stories of an S-rank beast. Covering part of his face with one hand, he explained that since that alleged incident, not a single credible sighting had been reported. He made it a point to mention that these rumors originated from none other than the Morgue family, longtime rivals of the Magic Tower. From the start, he had never trusted anything that came from them. As for the competition itself, he reassured those present that all summoned monsters were carefully calibrated to match the students' skill levels. According to him, participants currently ranged from low-level sword experts and fourth circle mages to the low-ranking graduators. With his hand still resting against his face, the old magician added one final note. If a student of the 7th circle or higher, or someone who had reached the level of swordmaster, were to participate, the system would begin summoning monsters that the students cannot handle. But that, he claimed, was an impossibility. Unaware that Vikir was a swordmaster. Even if something were to happen, the old magician assured that the competition would simply be suspended. Meanwhile, inside the tournament's waiting room, Tudor, Sancho, Piggy, and Bianca reappeared one by one, their HP shields having dropped to 0. Tudor rubbed the back of his head with an awkward expression, muttering that the rest of their team had been eliminated, too. On the other side, Piggy clutched his head in frustration, spiraling into regret. If only he hadn't let his guard down, they might still be in the game. Unbothered, The old magician reminded everyone that students whose HP shields reached 0 were automatically teleported to the waiting room as per the system's safety protocols. For him, that safeguard eliminated any cause for concern. With an arrogant smile tugging at his lips, he turned toward Professor Snape. Removing his glasses, he fixed Snape with a sharp glare and accused him of making a fuss solely because Colosseo Academy had the fewest students remaining. Professor Snape rose to his feet and firmly demanded that the old magician stop spouting nonsense. The old magician turned his head slightly, making it clear that this was a gathering of the Empire's finest magicians and that the Snape family, known mostly for their reputation, and Colosseo Academy were worlds apart. With a smile, he interlaced his fingers and dismissed Snape's concerns as nothing more than pointless worries over impossible fantasies that would never come to pass. Hearing this, Professor Snape clenched his teeth tightly, his eyes blazing with fury. Deep down, he knew reasoning with the stubborn old man was futile. Meanwhile, deep within the forest, Vikir sat silently before the bonfire, fingers interlaced as he stared into the flames. With a thoughtful gaze, he asked whether Tutor, Piggy, Bianca, and Sancho had been eliminated. Across from him, Sinclair gave a quiet nod, clutching her magic staff tightly, her eyes brimming with sorrow. She explained that Tutor and Piggy had been attacked while unarmed by Hohenheim of the Magic Tower. As for Bianca and Sancho, her voice faltered, the words refusing to come out. Vikir's expression darkened as he recalled the name Hohenheim, a renowned figure, one of the great heroes during the era of the Fall. Even among legends of the same generation, there were gaps in power, and Vikir understood just how wide those gaps could be. Sinclair felt a sense of relief for having found Vikir, but as she glanced over his stats, a flicker of confusion crossed her face. How was it that Vikir's HP still read a perfect 100? Leaning against a tree nearby, arms folded, Granola listened in. Sinclair's eyes lit up and, with a soft smile, she admitted how easily she grew tired, how just running a short distance through the forest had drained her HP. But Vikir, she said, was on a different level entirely. Vikir remained still, lost in thought, his expression unreadable. Granola's jaw tightened, his eyes flared with frustration. Watching them so comfortably close made his blood boil. To him, it was obvious. They had simply hidden deep in the forest, quietly hunting beasts to keep their HP the same. There was nothing impressive about that. He scoffed inwardly, convinced he could have done the same, if not better. Vikir's eyes narrowed, sharp and focused. Without a word, he turned and drew several arrows from his quiver, putting one to his bow and aiming directly at Granola. Granola froze, his eyes widening in panic. He threw his arms up in surrender, stammering that he hadn't said anything out loud. He was only thinking. Sinclair turned toward him, puzzled by the sudden tension. But then she saw it, too. Lurking just behind Granola, a tentacled monster slithered through the underbrush, its limbs poised to strike. Without hesitation, Vikir released the arrow. Granola dropped to the ground with a scream, shielding his head with both hands as if the shot were meant for him. The arrow flew past and struck the creature's writhing limbs dead on. From deeper in the trees, someone wielding a staff infused with pink mana watched the scene unfold. Even under the effects of a silence spell, one meant to mask all movement, Vikir had sensed the threat. Sinclair and the triplets immediately drew their weapons. Granola scrambled to his feet, breath ragged, and bolted toward the group, his face pale with fear. The student behind the surprise attack stepped forward, emerging confidently from the shadowed forest. She was from the Mischiro Women's University, Loveg Good. One hand rested on her hip, the other gripping her magic staff with practiced ease. She scanned the clearing with cool disdain, amused that the Colosseo Academy students had thought they could hide in such an obvious spot. At her side stood two teammates, a shield-bearing girl with 70 HP and an archer whose stats sat at 81. Loveg Good casually ran her fingers through her hair, her gaze sharp and smug. Lifting her staff, she pointed toward Vikir's group and called them out, foolish and arrogant for thinking they could stay out of her reach. One of the girls beside Loveg Good notices Sinclair, who was already gripping her staff, met their gazes with steady resolve. The archer leaned toward her teammate, asking quietly if she was sure it was her. With a tense nod, The other girl confirmed it, Sinclair, the so-called traitor. Despite ranking first in the Miss Jira entrance exam, she had chosen to attend Colosio Academy instead. Her voice lowered, and she urged her friend not to say any more in front of the president. But it was too late. Lovegood's expression twisted with contempt. She took a step forward, voice sharp, as she demanded how Sinclair dared to reject the Miss Jira, the top female academy in the empire, only to settle for Colosio. Her tone dripped with scorn as she accused Sinclair of switching schools over something as petty as romance. Twirling her fingers through her hair, Lovegood rolled her eyes and scoffed, throwing in one last jab. Colosio didn't even have any decent-looking guys, did it? But mid-sentence she froze. Her eyes landed on Vikir. A jolt shot through her chest. Her breath caught. Her pink eyes widened and a flush crept up her cheeks. Her words died as quickly as they'd begun, replaced by stunned silence. Her gaze clung to him. How could someone look so nerdy, cute, sexy and still somehow handsome at the same time? Vikir blinked, confused. Why was she staring at him like that? Inside, Lovegood was spiraling. She didn't even hear her teammates call her name. All she could think was, he's my type. My exact type. She began to drool. Sinclair, watching Lovegood practically melt over Vikir, calmly raised her hand and placed it over Vikir's face, shielding him from view. Her expression was anything but calm, eyes burning with fury. Her voice was filled with rage, as she addressed Lovegood, calling her ma'am and demanding she stop ogling Vikir. The effect was instantaneous. Lovegood's companions went pale. Their jaws dropped, mouths parted in silent disbelief. Did she just call the president ma'am? Lovegood's eyes widened. Her expression slowly darkened, amusement evaporating like mist. An oppressive aura radiated off her in waves laced with fury. Mana began to surge. Her body trembled with rage. Veins bulged as her grip tightened on her staff, and the ground beneath them began to quiver. You arrogant bitch! She hissed, her voice sharp as a blade. Power burst from her like a dam breaking. Tentacles made of pulsing mana erupted from the earth, writhing toward Sinclair. The clearing seemed to darken as the air thickened with pressure. Vikir and Sinclair stood their ground, silent, watching her without flinching. Lovegood's pink eyes gleamed with murderous intent, her scream tearing through the forest as she launched the attack. Deeper in the forest, the ground trembled as a series of explosions shattered the silence. Hohenheim, his HP at 83 and a smug smile playing on his lips, stood at the center of the chaos. With arrogance dripping from his voice, he called out to his fleeing opponent, ordering them to stop running and surrender, insisting that a healer alone was powerless without fighters by her side. Opposing him was Dolores, her jaw clenched tightly, eyes blazing with determination. She extended her hands, summoning a shimmering barrier just in time to block the oncoming attack. Her HP had already fallen to 55. The flames roared fiercely as Dolores took cautious steps backward, unaware that the ground behind her was fracturing. Sensing the shifting earth, she spun around, eyes widening in shock and dread as fire erupted from the cracked soil, trapping her in a ring of flames. Confident, Hohenheim advanced slowly, each step scorching the earth and leaving molten lava in his wake. His magic circle ignited in his hand, glowing ominously. He made it clear to Dolores that escape was no longer an option. Hohenheim's glasses caught the reflection of the blazing fire, concealing his eyes behind the glare. A malicious laugh escaped him. He was certain that defeating Dolores would be just the first step, and wiping out the rest of Colosio would be effortless. The Magic Tower was destined to claim victory in this year's survival competition. Dolores panted heavily, refusing to give up. She knew she couldn't fall here. Suddenly, a figure wielding a sword appeared, poised to strike. Both Dolores and Hohenheim turned their attention toward the newcomer, their expressions a mix of surprise and confusion. It was Jurassico, his body glowing with mana, eyes sparkling with excitement. He challenged Hohenheim's arrogance, warning him not to be so conceited. With a powerful swing, Jurassico launched his attack. Hohenheim reacted just in time, summoning a barrier to block the blow. Gritting his teeth, he realized Jurassico was a graduator based on his level of mana concentration. Jurassico's eyes gleamed with joy, a smile revealing jagged teeth spreading across his face. Noticing that Hohenheim had reached the fourth circle as a mage, he knew he couldn't afford to fall behind. Gathering all his strength, Jurassico struck the barrier with his sword once more. At the same moment, the tentacles summoned by Loveg Good surged swiftly toward Vikir and Sinclair. Vikir lifted his bow, arrows aimed and ready, while Sinclair clenched her staff with both hands, beginning to weave powerful spells. The Baskerville triplets closed in, slicing through the tentacles with precision and force. Vikir readied his bow to shoot, noticing that the magic Loveg Good wielded was similar to that of the Morgue triplets, known as the Three Flowers. Yet hers combined three different types of magic, demanding an extraordinary level of focus. He couldn't believe she could handle it so skillfully, even in such an emotional state. Suddenly, Vikir's eyes widened in shock, his body freezing as dread washed over him. In slow motion, he lowered his bow to his side and slowly turned his head. His expression filled with fear and uncertainty. The dense forest around them trembled. Birds scattered in panic, and Vikir sensed a suffocating, ominous energy closing in. Elsewhere in the forest, where Dolores, Hohenheim, and Jurassico were locked in a tense three-way standoff, the ground suddenly shook violently like an earthquake, throwing them off balance. Both Hohenheim and Jurassico stared down at the trembling earth. Hohenheim wondered aloud if it was an earthquake, while Jurassico looked puzzled, having heard no reports of such tremors in the forest. At that moment, something burst from the ground, sending dust and debris flying in all directions. Everyone's attention snapped to the source, their eyes wide with shock and fear, unsure of what was unfolding. As the creature fully emerged, Dolores, Hohenheim, and Jurassico were left speechless and stunned. Farther in the forest, Vikir and Sinclair also fixed their gaze upward toward the monstrous silhouette looming against the moonlit sky. A giant spider had risen from the earth. Vikir's eyes widened in disbelief as the shattered reflection of the S-rank beast appeared in the lenses of his glasses. The spider opened its massive mouth and let out a terrifying roar, causing the forest trees to tremble. It was Madame Eight Legs.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.